Welcome everybody to the Dynasty TCG rulebook How to Play lecture series by me, Hinchi Chung, the creator of Dynasty TCG. Now, this series is meant to give you extra insight on the full rulebook that we have on our website www.dynastytcg.com. Please enjoy. So, starting with the aim of the game is to defeat your opposing commander from 50 health to 0 health. Though we do understand that there may be some special conditions which allow you to win in other ways, such as if your opponent reaches 0 health and you reach 0 health at the same time, this will result in a draw. If your opponent cannot draw any more cards from the deck, then they deck out and you win the game. If both players have no cards on the field or cannot do anything, meaning no one could do a single thing in the game, then the player with the lowest health will lose. So setting up the game itself, getting all your resources ready on the table to play the game, it's a very simple procedure. The most important thing is to have your decks. You and your opponent have your decks of 50 to 60 cards where you can actually play against each other. For official tournaments, a side deck will be something that you can bring to it, where it consists of 0 to 15 cards that you can interchangeably swap with other cards within your deck between games. Enough space, obviously, because you need space to play the game itself, and then a series of different items that you'd prefer to track damage. It could either be a pad and paper, or it can be some dice. So this is the game mat itself. This is where the battle will be taking place and where the game occurs. To run through all the different zones that we have on the field, we have the order zone, which is where your continuous order cards are played and placed and remain there unless otherwise destroyed or removed. The unit zones, which is where you place your units to fight the battles for you. The discard pile is where you remove your cards, or once they've been destroyed, they get sent to the discard pile, or once you've used a certain order card, send it to the discard pile. The deck zone, of course, is where you place your deck, and the trade center is where you'll be making transactions during the game. More will be discussed in later segments of the lecture. Moving on, let's classify the whole board where you can actually see how it's organized and how it can be looked at from the way that we have categorized it. So the board itself is organized into rows. So as you can see from top to bottom, there's 3 rows, so top, mid, and bot. Top being the most front of your rows. On your rows, they're separated into A, B, and C. So it would be A at the top, B in the middle, and C at the bottom. Each row is separated into 5 different lanes. Lane 1 being your most left unit zone lane, moving all the way to the furthest right unit zone lane being 5. So you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can call out specific zones. For example, down here we've put C5. C5 would be on the furthest right lane, and they'll be on the most bottom row. That would be C5. A1 would be the top left corner in the unit zone. Unit cards are the cards that you'll be taking into battle. These are your warriors, these are your fighters, these are your troops. They're the people that are going to be doing the damage for you. And unit cards, some have effects, some don't have effects, and they are the most basic of units. Champion cards are very strong and effective units in changing the tide of battle. Now, they're split into 2 types of champions. You have a normal champion and a level up champion. Normal champions are just strong cards with strong effects. Level up champions, what happens here is once you level the champion up, which is basically hitting the level up requirement, for example, here it would be destroy 2 enemy units in the same turn. What you then do is search from either your discard pile, hand, deck, and you put the corresponding battle champion, which levels up from the level up champion, and replace the unit because the unit has leveled up in battle and become stronger, and you use that as a new card. So, battle champions. Here we are. Here's an example of a battle champion. Now let's go through the different points that we have on this slide. So, battle champions can be played directly from the hand onto the field. However, if you do that, the effects of the battle champion get stripped from it until it's destroyed and then brought back onto the field through a level up effect. But if you are to play it straight onto the field, its effects just disappears. It just turns into a very strong card itself. Now, there is no limits of how many times you can level up a level up champion. However, if you have a battle champion, for example, on the field and you've just leveled up the effect of a level up champion, you cannot then replace that level up champion with a battlefield champion which is on the battlefield. So by doing that, you are limited in the sense that that is the one thing that you really can't do because it's already in play. If it's not in play, then it would be easy for you to level up. As stated by the fourth point down there. Leveling up is applicable to battle champions that are not in play. That we talked about that. The stats of the card do refresh. So, for example, if you had a level up champion where they've taken 4 health, and then you level it up, all the stats are refreshed because you remove that champion level up champion from play, putting it into the discard pile, and replace it with your battle champion. Item cards equipped to the original champion then are put onto this battle champion, so the boosts are carried through. So these icons here you will see on the cards in the bottom middle of units. And we'll go through all the different icons. So the sword and shield is a melee. The double blades is reach. The helmet indicates champion. Horse, mobile. And then the bow and arrow is ranged. And the classification of the unit, what it means is the range, barring the champion helmet. But all of those other 4 indicate the range of how far that unit can reach. So order cards we have here, they're not played onto the battlefield. These are the cards that have specific effects that activate once you play the card. For example, gain 2 resources the turn you play this card of Grand Prosperity. Now, when you play a order card, what you do is show your opponent the card and then you put it into the discard pile and it's played. There are some effects that are continuous and that will be indicated on the card. If it's not said that it's a continuous order card, then you would play it as normal. If it were to be continuous, you would put it in the order card zone. The effects are immediate, so once it happens, it's done. It's it. It does not carry on. It's in that instant that it happens. There are different effects that do occur from this. For example, the range, increasing range perhaps, doing more damage, healing units. But right now we have 2 very specific cards in terms of orders where they are the normal order cards and we also have the champion order cards. And champion order cards can only be played when the listed champion name is actually on the field. So, for example, if you had Jinso the Swift, you would need to have Jinso on the field and then play the order card associated with Jinso's name. Item cards are played under your units. They are put into a horizontal position, and what happens is basically the effect of the card is transferred onto your unit. As you can see here, if you're retreating a unit which is holding an item, if you would like to bring the item back with you, you'd have to pay the resource cost of the item that you would like to bring back. They can also be targeted, and as it says here, you may only play item cards on your turn. As of this recording right now, environment cards, there's only one, and it's the wall. And what it says is durability 3. And what it means is it takes 3 damage. And what happens is when you play an environment card, you play it like a unit. So you'd put it onto the battlefield and it would change the environment of the battle. And for example, if your enemy is attacking the wall, they would attack the wall first and then anything behind the wall, unless they have the range. Resource mechanics. So now we're getting into the actual gameplay sort of rules and mechanics and sort of the flow of the game. So we begin with the resource mechanics. So each turn, at the beginning of your turn, you get 10 resources, and you get to spend those 10 resources during your turn and your opponent's turn, however you like. And then your next draw phase, you get 10 more. They do not stack, they always resets to 10. You may go over your 10 during your turn if you have the means to, and of course you can go below the 10. It's just every single turn it resets to 10. And on the second point, it does say whilst you do have resources on your opponent's turn, you can play orders and retreat. Those are the actions that you can do with the resources. So now we go into the order of cards and effects during play. I'm just going to read both of these points out. Order cards can be played during either player's turn unless otherwise stated. So that means you can play it on your turn and your opponent's turn. Players are required to use the resources to play. So if you had a full resource order card that you'd like to play on your turn whilst your opponent is playing, meaning on your opponent's turn, my apologies, you would have to have enough resources to actually activate the card and call out the order. Order cards are based on action and reaction, therefore it's within you and your opponent's power to make the order make sense. For example, if I were to play the order first, then my order would go first, unless another card states specifically otherwise. And then your opponent would then be able to play one and it would stack in the order of actual play, or action and reaction. So during the game, you are actually able to retreat your units. So if your opponent is declaring an attack and you would like to retreat your unit, you may say that you are retreating a unit. And what you do is pay the resource cost of the card to place it into retreat zone 2. And during your next draw phase, you then move the card from retreat zone 2 into retreat zone 1 without needing to pay another resource cost. It's purely a timer. If you look on the field, it's 2 to 1, and then on your second draw phase after your first retreat, the card then goes back into your hand and all the stats are refreshed. All of these points are just extra bits and bobs for you to fully understand, but to clarify and retreating, you are able to do that once per turn on your opponent's skirmish phase, and you are able to do it as many times as you physically can on your phase. So the trade center is where you actually sell cards for resources. So cards in your hand, you send to the trade center and you gain the resources, which is needed to play that card on the turn that you sell. If we look at bullet point number 4, cards placed into the trade center remain there until you buy them back. So you'd have to pay resources to actually buy them back. So it's a trade between you and an in-game merchant, as it were. And you can only buy from your own trade center. A really simple note for attacking is you may only be in battle for each unit. You can only be in battle once per skirmish phase, once per your skirmish phase, meaning you cannot attack or be involved in an attack to your opponent more than once. If there are empty lanes on your opponent's side of the field, you can attack your opponent directly because your units can charge forward and attack them. If there is a enemy unit using ranged units and you actually don't have the range to hit back, then your unit would take damage and the opposing unit would not take any damage. If you attack using a melee or mobile unit, then you will take damage on anyone you attack. Part of the attacking mechanics is using a lot of real life sense. If someone with a bow and arrow were to shoot you with a sword, they would hit you and you would not be able to hit them if you were 100 yards away from each other. To attack supporting units, you've got to have the range. For example, the opponent's Jinso, if we have a look at the field on the left, she has a range of 1, meaning she cannot hit B3 Jinso on our side of the field. And as it says at the bottom, only 1 attack per lane per unit. So very, very simple. Uniting an attack is where you boost a leading unit. So leading units can be in either a row A or B because they always have someone behind them, and you add all the attacks of the supporting units together, and then the leading unit would be dealing the damage and using the range of the unit as well to attack your opponents. Reinforcing is a defensive mechanism where you use a supporting unit and basically you rotate it 90 degrees in either direction, there is no specific, and then you place it on top of the unit being attacked that is supporting to the leading unit. And what happens is the attacking unit onto your reinforcing unit does damage to the reinforcing unit, but does not take any damage because it's in a defensive position. Units can all move one position in any of the directions that the blue arrows indicate, but you can only do this on your turn. Damage calculation: when you attack a defending unit, what happens is your attack takes away from their health, and then any excess is applied to the commander's health. Or if there's not, it remains on the unit that was being targeted for the attack. As we know, we have attack ranges on our units. The ranges are actually indicated by the diagram on the left here. We can go through all 4 different ranges. So starting with A1, we have melee. A2, we have reach. A3, we have mobile. And then A4, we have ranged. So the battle mechanics for a battle to actually take place, this is what we have here. So before the battle takes place, the attacking player will declare the attack to let your opponents know that you are beginning an attack. Before the attack is successful or unsuccessful, your opponent may play cards to the field. If they do this, meaning you declare an attack and your opponent would like to play a card, they have the right of way. They get to play their card before your attack lands. For example, as it says here, effect priority. The attack is still taking place, so your units are still on the move and going to attack. However, if an effect were to move your opponent's unit to a different zone and there is no target left, that is a failed attack. However, the units there have been in battle. So whether it lands or does not land, they have still been in battle. A mulligan for us is at the beginning of the game when you first have your hand. You may actually shuffle X number of cards into your deck and then redraw X number into your hand. If you were to do this and your opponent doesn't do it, then your opponent may draw a card if you both do it, but none of you draw the card. When searching for your deck, you must shuffle after you have searched for a card. I'm just going to quickly run down deck building rules by following the bullet points. You must have a deck between 50 to 60 cards. No card can have more than 3 copies in a deck. With each deck, there can only be a total of 4 copies of champion cards. So only 4 of those cards in your deck can be champion cards. For obvious reasons, competitive play, only legal cards can be played with. So here we have a turn structure, meaning this is one whole turn. So the turn begins, you draw 1 card, which indicates your beginning of the turn, as it were, because you also get the reset of the 10 resources. Then in skirmish phase, you can do absolutely anything in any order. So you can attack, retreat in any order you like there. So that's where all your actions take place. And then the end phase, where you pass the turn to your opponents. I know. Thank you everyone for staying and watching this video. This is a very, very quick debrief aid to certain rules that people might have issues with, or any areas where people might want further clarification. I hope it has helped. We're going to be planning to do more and more of these as we develop more. But obviously the full rulebook for everything you need is on www.dynastytcg.com. where you can find the full rulebook to actually play the game. This is just an analysis of certain rules to clear things up. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you guys are successful in future conquests.